In this video, we are going to recreate the default Meteor application. It's a very simple application, there's not much code to it, but you can still learn a few things, especially if you're a beginner. It'll give you a good insight into how certain concepts within Meteor work. We're not going to create a line-by-line replica, like it's not going to be literally the same code, but functionally it'll work in the same way. We're actually going to be doing it with less code though, and I think the code will be slightly more readable. Although if you look at the code for the default Meteor application right now, it's not exactly intricate. It's not impossible to understand. We're just going to take away a couple of the steps to get to the final result a bit quicker. What we want to do first up is open terminal so we can create our project. We'll just go into my folder that I use to store my Meteor projects. We'll create the project itself, go Meteor create, and we will call it default and enter. Project created, we go into default and we launch the local server, so just Meteor. And then we open up Sublime Text, my text editor of choice, and we will find my Meteor folder, and I'll actually drag it over there just to make it easier to get to. And we got this default folder, open up the HTML and the JavaScript file. Just ignore the CSS file for now. And what we're going to do next is open up Google Chrome, and we're just going to see what our application does. Just without changing anything, this is what we're going to basically be making. So we have the heading that says hello world, we have the greeting that mentions the name of the application, and then we have this button that when clicked, it sends a log statement to the console on the client side, so we can see that you press the button and if you keep clicking it, that keeps happening. So that is all the functionality. There's not much going on, but there's still a few things we can learn from it. What we want to do is go back to the text editor. We will just delete everything, it's all going. We're going to start completely from scratch. So if we refresh that, everything's gone. Perfect. Back in the template, we're going to just, like I said, create it from scratch. We create the head and we go title, just default, example. And you'll notice that we don't use the HTML tags to open the document, and we don't include any JavaScript or CSS files manually. And that's because Meteor does that all for us. All we need is the basic structure of the template itself, and Meteor will do all the magic to make sure it renders properly. We'll just create the heading now, so we can just go hello world. That's pretty simple, everyone knows how to do that. Boom, it appears. What we're going to do next though is going to be a little bit more interesting, because we're going to create a template. And a template basically allows us to use our JavaScript file to make our application a bit more dynamic. At the moment, we're just plainly putting HTML onto a page and rendering that. It's not very interesting. By using a template though, and as we'll soon see, we can start having a bit more fun. So how to create a template is simply at the bottom of the HTML file, you go template, we give it a name, we'll just call this hello, you can just call it really anything you want, and we'll close that tag. Then between these tags, we'll just put out any HTML we want, just welcome to default, and we'll save that. But what you'll notice is that in the browser, it doesn't show up. Even if we refresh it, it just isn't there. And that's because we have to do one extra step to make sure a template actually appears. We'll switch back to the text editor, and between the body tags, we'll go curly brace, greater than symbol, and then hello, just the name of our template. And this style of tags you see here is what is known as a handlebar tag. And handlebars is a templating engine, has a few different features we'll cover in the future. But what's important to understand at the moment is that this tag will include this template, meaning when we save it, we go to the browser and the text will appear if we refresh or just when it live reloads. And just to make this more like the original default application, we'll move the h1 tags into the template, and we'll also add a button because we'll need that later on. So input type equals button. We'll give it an ID, we can just call it default button. It's not a great name, but it's good enough for now. And value equals click. Save that, the button will appear, perfect. What we're going to do next is going to be a little bit more complicated, but if you don't get it straight away, fear not, you will understand it eventually. The point of this video is just to give you a quick look at the sort of thing you'll be doing in Meteor. If you don't quite grasp a particular concept, there'll be other videos that you can check out on the blog, and they'll have more detail and just a better introduction in general. In the meantime though, we're going to switch to our JavaScript file. And the most important thing to do up front is to write a conditional, because we only want the coming code to run on the client, meaning in the web browser. We don't want it running in the server. And that's because we're going to be writing code that is based on templates. It's going to be just purely for the front end. So if we try to run that on the server, Meteor is going to throw out an error and it just won't work. So first up, what we want to do is go if, we go meteor is client, so just is it running on the web browser, and then curly braces, and any code between here will only run in the browser itself. And what you're about to see is how we interact with a template. And what we simply do is go template, pretty simple. Template, we give it the name of the template. We will do hello, that's a template. And then what we're going to do is create something new, something we haven't already defined, and that will be called greeting. And this is basically going to be a function that just returns some text. So return, and it'll go welcome to default. And this code block here is what's known as a template helper. There's a lot of different ways we can use helpers. Just know for at the moment we're only using it to return this string. So all we're going to be doing is actually going back to the default template, the HTML template, replace this with some more handlebar tags, go greeting. Keep in mind we're not using the greater than symbol, and that's because you only use the greater than symbol when you're referencing a template, when you want to include a template, and that's not what we're doing here. What we're doing here is using this greeting tag to reference this greeting helper. So if you save all that, refresh just to make sure, it still works perfectly fine. Just to prove that what this is doing is showing up, just add a couple dots there, refresh, there you go. Functionally, what we're doing here is not very useful. It doesn't really make sense to just not put the text straight into the HTML document, but you will be coming across this syntax in the future, so just expect to see it more often. The much more practical thing that we can now learn though is how to make our button react to click events, because at the moment you click on the button and nothing happens. It's just a dead button. To remedy this, we are going to create an event. And how we do this is once again we go template, because we're still operating within the hello template, and then we go hello, and then we go events, and you can pass in multiple events if you want. So we go brackets, curly brace, and just put the semicolon at the very end, and it's within this block that we can now define our events. In this example we are just going to create a click event, so we go click. So there are different events we could use at this point. We could have made a submit event, for instance, so when you submit a form you can have code execute, but just to keep it simple we'll stick with what is probably the most obvious event, which is the click event. Then to hook up this event to our button, we just reference the ID, so we go default button, and it's just very similar to jQuery. If you've ever used jQuery, works in the same way. So just to be extra specific, we could say input and then default button as the ID. Then after that we put the colon, and then we pass a function into it. So this function can do anything we want it to do, but because we want to pass something to the log, we'll go console.log, and then we'll just pass our message and go, you pressed the button. And put the semicolon at the end, and we'll save that. And now, if I've done that right, that should be fully functional. We click the button, and you press the button. And we can keep pressing it, and it'll keep working.